When I first started this full-time art journey nearly 2 years ago, I was desperate for someone to tell me how to do it. And since then, I have learned quite a bit, and I would love to share some of my thoughts on that today with you as I work in my home studio. This week I've spent a few days working through a commission, and I need to get the background finished today. So today's a pretty full day. I have to get the background of that commission completed. I am meeting with a girlfriend over Zoom. We're gonna do our first podcast, which is something that I never thought I would do, but isn't everybody doing podcasts these days? And we just hope to talk about our art journey and maybe encourage and inspire others who are on a similar point in their journey or just beginning. And then I have a birthday party I need to get to this evening in the city. So that is the list of things that need to get accomplished today. And if you're new here, I'm so glad that you're here. Hi, I'm Alexis. I'm a full-time artist in New York City. I have this little corner in our apartment as my home studio, and on this channel I hope to share some of my process and inspiration and who it is that I am and why I create what I create, and snapshots into life in New York City. Because let's face it, that kind of weaves into the everyday existence of someone like me. And so a little bit of art, a little bit of the city, and a little bit about my thoughts on life. If that's your jam, I'm glad you're here. Stick around. I'm gonna put in my headphones and get that audiobook going. I'm almost done with The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and I'm gonna get you set up. We're gonna get this background done, and we'll see where the day takes us. But so glad you're here. If you take a more traditional path in life, there are defined steps to what comes next, what's expected, a clearish journey to follow. But what happens when you decide to forego the traditional and venture into the unknown? When I first began on this freelance full-time artist path, I was desperate for a guide, a how-to. I was certain that if I studied the lives of other creatives, I would find the key to making this work. I would break the code that would ensure my journey would be successful and sustainable. And so I began observing, listening, and asking questions. And the thing that was made most abundantly clear through the search of how to do this, how to build a thriving creative life, was that there is no one way of doing it. Everyone that I know and respect living in their creativity, sustaining a life through their creations, has found a way to make it work for them. Each path, each practice and business looks vastly different than any other. At first, I was dismayed by this because I am really good at following a game plan, and for nearly 2 decades, that's exactly what I did. But the more I sat in this dismay, that discomfort, the more the answer became abundantly clear. I had done the traditional thing. I'd followed the path, the game plan. I had followed all of the rules, and what had it gotten me? A deep, growing dissatisfaction and tremendous burnout. Clearly, that was not it. So perhaps what was it was figuring out a path forward that honored my humanity and the life I dreamed possible. And so I began to build. I learned a ton of new programs: Illustrator, Photoshop, Final Cut Pro. I experimented with my art. I got more clear with my messaging. I went all in on avenues that interested me and allowed me to build a practice and a business. I went all in on a path that allows for flexibility, creativity, and life. And what has worked for me and so many other creatives in my life is finding a few streams of income that, when put together, will allow for thriving. These streams look different for everyone. They are specific to practice, passion, and desire. What's worked for me? I have a thriving art practice with Paper for the People, where I sell hand-cut paper portraits and prints. I do a ton of commission work, and I've had the incredible opportunity to work with some major brands. Last summer, I was incredibly lucky to do 2 in-store activations with Tiffany & Co. here in New York City. I also have another business as Pages for the People, where I sell inclusive, joyful clip art on Teachers Pay Teachers. Because you can take the teacher out of the classroom, but they're always going to be, in some small way, a teacher and an advocate for kids. I've got a podcast coming with a dear fellow paper artist, and now I've got this endeavor on YouTube. Our brains are wired to find the paths of least resistance, to find what's safe. It's survival ingrained. But what happens when the rules are no longer creating those safe paths so easily found by our elders? You see, the thing that makes a creative path forward so appealing is the fact that there are no rules. We get to make it up. We get to build it into whatever we want it to be. We decide where we will spend our time, what inspires us, and what leads to a life worth living. Anytime I get the opportunity to speak with someone about building a creative life, that is the very thing I think is most important to share. There is no one way of doing this. It takes a lot of discipline and work, but you get to decide what you want it to look like. You get to decide the paths worth pursuing. You get to customize your work to build the life of your dreams. The one that allows for a deep thriving, and the one that brings the most joy. So I'm making progress on the background, and I'm making progress on the audiobook. I got 2 hours left. We're gonna pause on the commission. We're gonna do this podcast, then we're gonna get back to these palm trees and this audiobook. We're gonna finish it all up, and then I can get out the door to that birthday party. Someone who works from home, I'm really grateful that I have community who live kind of everywhere at this point, but they love to jump on phone calls and Zooms, and it just creates this sense of community as a creative, especially full-time in an apartment, mostly by myself. So if you are on this path, if you are able to find a community and even just meet on Zoom, I highly recommend it. I have been so lucky to meet a handful of people on this journey. The support within that has just been such a lifesaver on so many different days, even just questions of how to answer a client request. I mean, things like that that we don't always think about. So if you are on this journey of trying to build a creative life, find your community. That is perhaps one of the most important pieces of advice that I can give to you. But before I talk too long and I end up being late for this, I'm gonna get going, and here we go. No, I was gonna say it's definitely very niche, and that's a question I get very often. We create pieces of art out of paper. And so that looks different for many people in the community. And so I can talk a little bit about what I do with paper, and then if you want to talk about, because your journey has evolved quite a bit over the years with how you use paper. So I use paper to create portraits and illustration, and I layer it to create depth and variations in color, and that's how I use paper for my art. How about you? I just want to thank you for spending your time with me today. I know that time is valuable, so I truly am honored for any amount of time that you spend with me. Hopefully you found something helpful or interesting or inspiring in this video. Please give it a like if you did. That helps YouTube know to share me with other people who might also find it helpful. And if you would like to follow along on this journey of creating a creative life here in New York City, be sure to subscribe. I would really love to have you here as we build this community in our little corner of the internet. And lastly, whatever time of day you've watched this, I hope it's been a kind one. Until next time.